Welcome to Cross That Bridge. Today I'm joined by Moheb Moses, one of Australia's most respected voices in channel management. With over 30 years of experience, Moheb has coached over 8,000 professionals in 15 countries across APAC, US, and Europe. So much so, he was inducted into the ARN Hall of Fame for his outstanding contribution to the IT industry. In this episode, we will explore the art and science of building high-performing channels ecosystems, scale businesses globally, the mindset shifts needed for genuine partner collaboration. So let's dive into the mindset, lessons, and leadership of the true channel master, Moheb Moses. Welcome, Moheb, to the show. Well, we've known each other for a number of years now, and I attended one of your trainings 15 years ago. I think in total you have been in channel coaching business for about 30 odd years.
Maybe even a little bit more than that, but yeah.
Yeah. So, what made you be a coach and then a channel coach, not just a sales coach?
Okay.
Why pivoting into a niche?
To be honest, I kind of fell into it. So I'd worked for vendors, distributors, solution providers for 10 years or so, 20 years. And my job got made redundant, and I was doing some consulting work for a training company. And I noticed all of their training was about how to sell to end users. And my background was channel. And so it kind of evolved from that, which was educating people on how to sell through partners rather than sell to end users, because they're really fundamentally different.
So did you see a gap in the channel business when you started channel coaching?
Yeah, exactly that. So here's the difference. So for example, if you're selling to a customer, you talk to them about why your product's the best, because they're going to use the product. So you talk about the functionality or the capability or the price or performance, whatever it is, but you talk about why your product is the best to a customer who's going to use it. Well, when you're selling through a channel, they're not going to use it. Remember, they're selling it to someone who'll use it. So telling them about the product is part of it, but it's more than that. You've got to give them a reason to be able to make money out of the product. Because if they can't make money out of it, it doesn't matter how good your product is, they won't sell it. So that was the difference. It was a difference in mindset with why you should sell through a partner versus to a partner. And it's frightening. You know, our business turned 20 at the end of last year. So here we are 20 years, and I still see some of the same issues that we saw 20 years ago. This selling to a partner as if they're going to buy the product and use it when they're not. They're going to resell it. So there's still that gap. It's closed, but it still exists.
So explain that a bit more. So
Okay.
How it is different to selling to a partner or selling through a partner?
Okay, all right. So that's kind of the core to this. So let's pretend you're selling a product. If I said to you, why do your customers buy the product? You may say, well, it's the fastest. Or you may say it performs the best, or it's the most secure, or it's the easiest to use. So they're all reasons why you would use it. Okay. Now pretend you're somebody selling that to a customer. Okay, so you're not going to use it, you're selling it to a customer. And pretend all of those features existed, but let's, just for the sake of argument, pretend your buy price was the same as what you were selling it for, meaning you made no money out of it. Would you sell it?
No.
No, because there's no money in it, right? It doesn't matter how good it is or how fast it is or any of those things. If you can't make money out of it, you're not going to sell it. But we still see channel managers and salespeople talking to partners and saying, let me tell you how great my product is, and hopefully you'll sell it. They haven't thought about the money that the partner makes out of it. Or sometimes they think about it, but at a very rudimentary level, meaning they just think about the margin. And you often hear that. You'll hear a channel manager saying to a partner, you should sell our product, you'll make 20% margin. Okay. Or 25, or whatever the number is, right? It's okay. So two comments that I would add to that. A, if you don't sell a lot of it, it doesn't matter. 25 or 30% margin of a small number is still a small number, right? So you've got to be able to sell a lot of it. But the other one, the more important one is, if for you to be able to sell my product, you've got to train in it, you've got to sell it, you've got to put all this activity into selling it. It's not profitable. Yes, sure, you made 25, 30% margin, but that's not much if you've not sold a lot or you've spent, tens of thousands of dollars
investing
getting
into
exactly
investing
right.
in training, resources.
So we talk about the holistic concept of what channel profitability is. And a lot of the time, the margin may not come from your product. It may come from the services around it. And so whether I make a small margin on your product or a high margin is irrelevant. It's the profitability of the whole business model. In other words, okay, sorry, and I'm going to go off on a little tangent for a second. If you're selling a product, I compare your product against somebody else's. If, your IBM, I may compare you to HP or Cisco against, Palo, whoever it is, I'm comparing a product versus another product. But when it's a channel model, I'm not just talking about a product, I'm talking about the profitability for my business. So your competition isn't another product, it may be something completely different. In other words, you come and talk to me and say, I want you to sell my security solution. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, do I even want to establish a security practice, or should I be building a cloud practice or an AI practice before I even think about security? And if I'm going to go down a security practice, is yours a better solution to make me more profitable than somebody else's? So that's what changes. But a lot of people, approach it with, let me tell you about my product and how great it is and how much money you'll make out of it, without thinking about the overall business model. And if I could take two extreme examples, because actually, let me go back a step. When we think about what does a channel do, because that's kind of the key question. What is the role of the channel? You think about what a vendor makes. So a vendor makes a product, but a customer has an experience they want, in whatever form that may be. And there's a gap. That gap is what the channel does, right? So if you ask me, why do you have a channel? It's to fill that gap, whatever that gap may be. So now let me take two extremes. Let's take an Apple iPhone. Well, that phone is so close to the customer experience, there's not much to do. Like, there's no support or training. The product is effectively the customer experience. Apple have designed it that way. So the channel doesn't have a great role other than selling it. And it's reflected in the margins, right? Apple margins are like this big, right?
Yep.
Okay, contrast that to something like a Oracle or an SAP or a Salesforce.com, for example, where the license is a very small element. To achieve the outcome for the customer, somebody has to identify the business process that they're trying to re-engineer, install the software, train it, align it with other software products. There may be a security element to this, an integration element. There may be third-party products. There may be redesigning the way you approach business, etc. And it's reflected in the margin as well. So for those products, the services attached to the license is in the order of 4-to-1, meaning for a solution provider, they'll make $1 out of your license. They'll make $4 out of the services attached, right? And if you think, let's say the margin on the product is, say, 10%, and the margin on your services is 30%, okay, so 4 times the number of services and 3 times the profitability. That's for every $1 of profit you make on license, you make $12 of profit out of services. Who cares about the license, right? So the profit model then isn't, let me tell you how good my product is. It's, when you sell my product, let me tell you how profitable your company will be by providing services around it.
So let me ask you another follow-up on this. The reason that gap exists is because people don't understand business, but they only understand the technology or the product. And when I say people, these mean channel managers or sales leaders.
It's a combination of both. So most software and hardware vendors think about their product. That's what they think about. There's some that, and I'm being unfair, some obviously think beyond that, but they know their product. Most of their training is, let me tell you about how good our product is. Let me tell you why it's better than a competitor, et cetera, et cetera. So that's most of the training that they get internally. And so that's often the training that they deliver to their partners. But to be an effective channel manager, the real skill is, it's a business skill. It's not, how do I sell you my product, which is a sales skill. I'm sorry, please don't think I'm saying that's not important. It still is. I still have to have a selling component to what I do. But it's not, let me sell you my product. It's, let me show you why you selling my product to your customers is going to be a profitable business decision for you to invest in. So I need to understand business. And I'm sure we'll talk a bit about what's changed in our industry in terms of the evolution towards as a service and recurring revenue and subscription and so on, and where it becomes even more relevant. But even at a really fundamental level, I have to understand profitability and margins and how you run your business. And most training that is done by the vendor to their salespeople and by the salespeople, channel salespeople, to their partners is, our product is really great. Let me tell you how great it is, and then you will sell it and people will buy it. That's only half the equation. So, yeah.
So that's, I think that's a fundamental expectation vendor, when you're wearing a vendor hat, that, okay, I've onboarded a partner, now they will sell it.
Yeah.
And I'll just sit back and collect the money.
Yeah. Yes. And that's true. And I hear it all the time. It's like, we want a partner, or whatever it is, one that we've been trying to work on. And the language is almost like, that's it, that we did the hard. No, that's the beginning of the hard bit. When you win a customer, that's the end. There's the sales cycle, and then you win the customer and you cheer or whatever it is. I don't know if people still do that, but, back in the olden days, you'd ring a bell or whatever, because we won this customer. Well, when you win a partner, that's not the end, that's the beginning. You have to onboard them, enable them, train them, go out with them on joint sales calls, educate them on how to uncover and develop their own business, how to support it, how to evolve with you as you introduce a new product, etc. So that is the beginning of the journey, not the end of the journey. And it's one of the fundamental differences of, how you work with a partner. So yeah, that idea of now we can sit back and count the money is really, really flawed. That's not what it is, the beginning. And of course, as we've seen, if you don't know how to enable and onboard a partner correctly, they lose interest. Because I don't care how good your product is. If it's hard to sell or I don't make money out of it, there's a whole lot of other ones that I could sell and make much more money out of. So you've got to give me a reason to sell it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, people are on crossroads multiple times in their career.
Yeah.
When they are navigating through the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
Some find it by chance, get into channels. Some go by choice.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. That's true.
Is there a structure, or if, let's say, you were to break this scientifically, what are the personas or personality types, be it Myers-Briggs or DISC, who should and who should not opt for channels?
Okay. That's an interesting question, actually. So I'm going to say it's not a personality type, funnily enough. And you're right. There's the Myers-Briggs and all of those, and they define personalities. And look, I'm generalizing a little bit, but for example, a lot of the time the personalities end up being things like a driver, or somebody who's very amiable, or someone who's reserved, or someone who's an extrovert, or someone who's analytical. They're the personality types. That in itself is not what should lead you to being a channel person or not. And in fact, I think a good channel model is one that has all the personalities in it, because you're dealing with different types of partners, and you want different personalities for different types of partners. It's actually more to do with what I'm going to call your selling and negotiation style. And I want to draw two elements that counteract against each other. One which is a competitive nature, and one which is an appeasing nature. A competitive nature is somebody who just wants an outcome, a result, at all costs, and let's call that competitive. But an appeasing nature is one that cares more about the personality, and I don't want to offend you. I want to make sure that you still like me, and as a result, I tend to be more friendly, more subservient's a bit stronger word, but I appease you. I want to make you happy. You often see it reflected in when you ask me for a discount, I try to give you a discount rather than trying to negotiate it. Whereas a competitive person would say, how do I not give you the discount? How do I push back, right? So they're two different personalities. Okay, so if we counteract those two, the ideal channel person is one that is high on both competitive, and relationship.
It's a good balance of.
It is, because you need both. You need to, and when I say, but it's a balance of the two. You need to be somebody that is outcome focused, because you've got to achieve a result, both for your own organization and for the customer. But unlike direct sales, it's not a one-off thing. You don't, if I'm selling you a car, I sell you a car, I'm not going to see you again for another 5-7 years, if ever, depending on what car you buy next. If I sell you a home, I may not. So for me, I want to win. I want to, because it's this one-off transaction. But if I'm selling you a solution that you're going to sell to all your customers, you and I need a relationship, because we're going to be in this for 5, 10, 20 years. So I've got to make sure you achieve an outcome, and I've got to have a relationship with you as well. So I find that the style that works well is the combination. If you only have one, it fails. If you're really competitive, if you like to win, you will win. You'll get the sale, but you
lose a person.
You lose a person, you lose a relationship, it doesn't continue. If you're appeasing, every time you ask me for something, you may think you're doing the right thing by your partners, giving them a bigger discount, giving it to whatever they want, but you're not, because what ends up happening is they will end up consciously or unconsciously using you, and more importantly, not respecting you as much. So you need to want to have the relationship and achieve an outcome, and it's a balance of both. And if I can make a comment, I find a generalization, salespeople lean much more towards the outcome side. Sorry, direct salespeople lean more towards the outcome side, and that makes sense. But channel managers, and this is false thinking, lean much more towards the relationship side, and that is flawed. You have to be in the middle. You have to be both. And so this sounds like a weird thing to say, but you get more respect from your partners telling them no than saying yes. Because your job is not to just appease them. Your job is to understand why they're asking for that. And, we can talk more about that in terms of the selling aspects, but to understand why are they asking that, and how do I make you more successful, more profitable.
What are the core fundamentals of channel building? Let's say you were to transform a channel today of an existing program, or you were to build one from scratch.
Okay.
What will be your core fundamentals?
Okay, so let's begin with building it first, and then we'll talk about transforming it. So building a channel. So why? So the question is, why even build a channel? And can I just say that's like the first question that you should ask is, why are you creating a channel? Now that may seem like a kind of a really silly thing, and different people will have different reasons. But being aligned internally on why you have a channel is really critical. So if I can give you an example, I mentioned we've been around for 20 years. So we've worked with a lot of companies. We've worked with 180 vendors, believe it or not, across, Asia, Pac, Europe, US, Australia, et cetera, So a really broad and diverse group. And whenever somebody says a channel's not working, one of the really common things that we find in that is they're not really clear on why they even have a channel. And that may seem really silly, but let me give you an example. If sales think the reason that you need a channel is because they help you close business, and if marketing think the reason you have a channel is to generate leads, and if finance think the reason you have a channel is to defray costs, well, you've got 3 different reasons. And so if you're measuring the success or performance of a channel with different metrics or different aims, then at any one time, somebody will say, my channel's not working because it's not doing what I...
is not being met.
Yeah. And it's surprising how often there's not alignment as in why do you have a channel? Now, most of the time when you ask somebody, why do you have a channel? The most obvious answer is usually leverage, which is I talk to one partner, and that partner exposes me to multiple customers, and so I have this leverage. Instead of having multiple salespeople speaking to 10 customers, I have one person speaking to a partner, and that partner speaks to 10. So that's kind of the most obvious answer, and the most common answer as well. But there's some subtleties around that as well. And so one of them is that's a very vendor-driven view. So if I'm a vendor, that's how I view it. I talk to one partner, and they expose me to multiple customers. But now I want you to think about from the customer's point of view, which is from the customer, I speak to one partner and they expose me to multiple vendors. And so sometimes the partner is as important to the end user as it is to you. And sometimes the partner is more important to the end user than it is to you. In fact, let me give you a really silly example, right? Let me just pretend you walk into your favorite grocery store to buy your favorite soft drink, right? Let's just take that as an example. And pretend it's not on the shelf. What are you going to do? You've only got two choices. What do you do?
You're probably going to ask, is that available?
Yeah.
If not, then
yeah. So you're either going to buy something else or you're going to walk out and go to a shop that has it, right?
Yeah.
They're your only two choices. Buy something else or go somewhere else, right? That decision that you make, silly as it may seem, is the difference between you deciding what's more important to me, the vendor or the channel. Because if you buy something else from that store, you're saying the channel's more important to me.
Interesting.
If you walk out, you're saying the vendor's more important to me. Now, that silly little example, that silly question, that silly decision you made in your head as to which one do I do, well, customers do that all the time. And sometimes, if I'm building a solution that has multiple elements, well, do I pick a specific vendor and that's what I do? And if you don't sell it, I'm going to go somewhere else? Or do I say, look, you're the expert in this, you tell me what I should buy? Okay, so in fact, let's look at this little studio here. Someone decided what microphone, what table, what lights, the padding on the walls, the cameras that we're using, the tripods, etc. Okay, no, so either, when you built this, somebody built it for you. So either you said, I want this brand of microphone, can you buy it and set up for me? Or you said, can you build me a recording studio? And they did it all for you.
So it's kind of solution versus product discussion.
Yeah.
And again, it comes down to is partner being perceived as a consultant or integrator or just a product seller?
Exactly right. And if you're in an enterprise organization, you probably have a team of 20 or 30 security people and they know what they want. And so they tell the solution provider what to do. But if you're a small SMB and you're a bakery, for example, what you know is how to bake bread. You don't know security or what you need. So you would go to a solution provider and say, make my business secure. I don't know what it means. I just know I need to be, but you're probably not going to advise them on, well, I want, CrowdStrike versus Palo or whatever it is. You say, I want a solution, and the SMB becomes a consultant, and you go with what they decide to do.
Yep.
So I've gone kind of a long way around, but coming back to that, why do you have a channel? So leverage is one, but other reasons are, well, it may be that that's what the end user needs. If you're not part of that solution provider's offering, the end user won't look at you because they don't want another product. They want the solution provider to provide it. Or it's to fill that. Remember we talked about this gap. Well, if you make a product that requires someone to install it and configure it and integrate it with other products, you may not have the expertise to do that. Again, if I take this recording studio, if you sell microphones, you know microphones, you may not know lights, you may not know how to set up the table and so on. So there's somebody that's going to design this. And in technology, it's the same scenario. We always have to think about the customer and their outcome. So let's say I'm an airline that is implementing a new ticketing system, let's say. Well, if you are a server manufacturer, then you think what that airline needs is your service. If you're a network provider, you think what that network needs, that is your network.
Is your network, yeah.
But for a ticketing system to work, there's a whole lot of stuff, right? There's the server, there's network, but there's security solutions, printers, lighting, the cooling systems, backup and recovery, the software itself, the installation, etc. Depending on who the vendor is, they'll tell you it's our business. Solution provider will go, no, it's not. They're trying to build that airline ticketing system. I need a bit from you, a bit from you, a bit from you, and I'm going to put it together. And that's this gap that I refer to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
what are the common reasons why partner programs underperform?
Mm-hmm.
And how will you fix those without alienating key partners?
Okay. All right. So let's think about what a partner program is first, and that is a program that is designed to enable and influence and motivate and support your partners to sell your product. And I'm going to break it up into two pieces first to explain it. So the first one is the program structure and then the program elements. So program structure, for example, is how many partners am I going to have? Is it a small number of dedicated partners or a really broad number that are, that cover everything? Am I going to have 2 or 3 tiers? So in other words, am I going to have a distributor or am I going to sell directly to the partners? Am I going to have a direct element to it? In other words, am I going to keep some customers that I will sell to direct and have partners sell to the others, or am I going to have the two? So that's structure, and we can talk about where you use one or the other. And then there's the other element, which is also the other component, which is program elements. So that's things like the pricing structure I give you, whether I implement something like marketing development funds or deal registration or rewards or a president's club or a tiering structure on pricing or whatever. So, and people often refer to partner program as this thing, but there's two things. So one is the structure. How do you structure your program? And then what are the elements that you put in place? Okay, so let's talk about the first one. So the structure is always a function of who's your customer, what product are you selling and what does it compete with, and the financial model. So let's take some examples. If you're selling engines for, let's use the airline example. We started with that, we may as well stick with one. If you're selling engines for big passenger airlines, there's not many, your customer base, right? It's defined. How many airlines are there in the world that need to buy, jets? It's very defined. Do you really need a channel to do that? Maybe not. Maybe you can do it direct. Or if you are, maybe you only have one per country, like one partner, or maybe 2 at most. But you don't need a big channel. And there's, often the reason you're doing it in a country, so let's say, for example, you're setting up in Kazakhstan as an example. Well, you want somebody that understands the language, understands government and regulations and the currency elements, etc. But you certainly don't need, if you compare that to, I know you used to work for Trend Micro. If you're Trend Micro, you may have 200 partners in that country. You certainly don't need 200 partners selling engines for jets, but you may need 200 partners selling security solutions because it's going to enterprise, mid-market, SMB, home users, consumer, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so it begins with who's the customer. And that will give us an idea of whether we need to be broad or we need to go deep. The second one is a product, and we've talked about that. What needs to go around it? If I'm selling an iPhone, I just need someone to sell it. If I'm selling mice, if I'm selling Logitech mice, how hard is that? But if we're selling something that's really complex, that requires integration, then that gives me a different type of partner. And again, I may need some or less. And then the final one is financial model. I've got to work out how do I make my partners profitable? So, I think there's some people who have a naive view that the more partners, the better. Well, that may be true if you're selling cans of Coca-Cola, because the more the better. But if you're selling something that's complex and requires integration, then the more partners you add on, the less business, they start competing with each other, the profitability drops down, and they go, why do I want to do this? There's no money in it. It's not worth it for me.
So is there a magic number in that sort of scenario that you should not exceed, let's say, 20 partners or 50 partners or 100 partners? Is there a magic number?
There's not a magic number. There's a magic calculation.
Yeah. What is that? What is that?
The magic calculation is work out what you think you're going to sell, right? Work out what the revenue is based on that. So if you're going to sell 100 units I've got to make math simple, otherwise I'm going to start confusing myself. If you're going to sell 100 units at $1,000, for example, let's just go with that. Well, that's $100,000 in revenue. Yep. If your margin is 30%, that's $30,000. Obviously, we can make that millions or whatever. It's $30,000, right? So now $30,000 is what you're going to make. And obviously, that's not a but why don't we make that per month to
make it a bit more exciting.
Yeah, to make it a bit. Okay, so what you know is out of your product, selling 1,000 units at $100, or 100 units at 1,000, whichever one it was.
$30,000.
Okay, all right. At 30% margin for the partner is $30,000. That's what a partner is going to make. Okay. Now, let's say you want a salesperson. You need a salesperson in order to be able to do it. Let's make the math simple again. Let's say the salesperson is making $120,000 a year to make it easy.
Yep.
So $10,000 a month.
Yep.
Okay, so there you go. $30,000, $10,000 per rep. You can only afford 3 sales reps for this to make sense. You add more sales reps, it's not profitable for the partner. They can't make money out of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, I've simplified that. Obviously, nobody's going to invest a $10,000 a month sales rep to generate $10,000 profit, because you go, hang on, there's the training, there's the selling it, there's all the
extra bits and pieces required to run a business. Yes.
Yeah, to run a business. But if I said to you, okay, you're going to make $10,000 out of the license out of my product, but you'll make an extra $30,000 out of services, and you go, okay, so if I put on a sales rep, it costs me $10,000, make $40,000. Maybe it makes sense. Okay, so what's the magic formula? Work out what the profit is on your product. I don't care whether you do it monthly or annually, but work out what the profit is on your product. Work out how many partners you'll have, divide that number by that number, and work out, well, how much on average. Obviously, the 80-20 rule is going to skew that. Your top 20% of your partners are going to make much more of that than their long tail. But work out as an average and say, okay, so if that's my average, what can I afford to have if I want them to make this level of investment? And that starts to give you an indication. And more often than not, when you look at a channel not being really committed to your business, when you look at it and do that maths, you go, of course not. They're just not making enough money to invest. And so that's the so the financial piece is really critical, and of course the other part is the skills around it. So, like I said, there's this gap. So if I come to you, let's say you're already a security provider, as an example, and you're already providing security solutions, and I come up with another little piece of software that you can plug in. And it's easy. Well, there's no training. It's an additional sale. That makes a lot of sense. It's fine. But let's say you are a self-storage, and I come to you and say, you should build a security practice with my product. You go, hang on. For me to hire somebody new to learn about security, it doesn't matter what margin I make, the investment required, I'm not going to make any money out of this.
How do you identify is the time to evolve or redesign a channel strategy?
Okay.
Is there a method to this madness?
Okay. All right. So there's got to be a reason, right? So the reason is possibly it's not working. Okay. So if it's not working, we need to look at why that is. Okay. So we first of all need to.
And how do you know it's not working? Is there a metrics?
Okay.
Again, is it who decides that? VP of sales or a finance or marketing? Who decides that this is a broken system?
So
who has a final word?
Okay, so it's usually an internal decision that you make, and it's either it usually comes from the VP of sales or the MD saying we need to grow. So I mean, you know what our industry is like, right? Every year, what do we do? The only thing we know for certain, regardless of change, we know our target's going to be higher. Okay, so every year there's always pressure to
grow the
more.
business. Yeah.
Yep, and so it's a strategy decision that the enterprise makes. Either we're going to sell more by recruiting more people, or we're going to sell more by investing in channel. If you take that second path, how do you know it's not working? Is if the results don't meet the expectations. Now, maybe the expectations were wrong. Who knows? But that's irrelevant, right? You set expectations. And they're not being met, and so why are they not being met? Well, it could be a number of things. It could be that you've got the wrong partners, for one. So what I mean by that is when you have a product, some customers will want to buy it, and they will go through their partners, and some partners will place orders with you. The question is, are they the right partners? In other words, are they selling it because they genuinely believe in it and want to sell it and want to be a partner? Or are they just selling it because there was an opportunity and they sold it? Okay. So channel strategy is about selecting partners, not just collecting partners. So identifying what makes an ideal partner, what are the skills that we want, what's the customer base that we're trying to target, does this partner address that, etc. And so identifying and selecting partners that will be the right partners for us. But quite often, because everyone wants to make a sale, we collect partners. A partner rings up and says, I want to place an order. Sure, we'll add them to our database. And all of a sudden you've got this massive list of partners and you think, wow, look how well we've done. We've grown our channel from 1,000 resellers or partners, solution providers to 2,000. Well, if 500 of those are duds who are discounting and bring the price down, you'll alienate a whole bunch. So one of the first things is maybe it's the wrong partners and we need to find new ones. When it becomes really noticeable that you've got the wrong partners is when there's a change either in a product strategy or a customer buying behavior. If I can give you an example of two, when we went from, I've been around this industry a long time. Back in the days when I first started, when you sold a server, the margin you made on it was 30%, but someone came out, delivered it, installed it, configured it, gave you some training, made it work. Right? We're going back a number of years. Well, that changed. The product and the service got separated. So you just bought the product and then you paid to have someone service it. Well, when that happened, we saw a number of partners disappear. The ones that were used to making these enormous margins, when the margins suddenly got gutted and they had to sell services, some of them didn't have the right salespeople or processes or methodologies to be able to do it. And they disappeared. So you needed new partners. I'm talking about years ago, but history repeats itself. We saw the same thing when it moved to cloud, people and recurring revenue. Partners that knew how to sell a product. You buy this product and it's whatever it is, $100,000. If that changed from being $100,000 to buy it to now $5,000 a month recurring, some people didn't know how to do that. And they didn't have the financial model to do it because that $5,000 a month in the long term is actually much more profitable, which is a recurring revenue business, a managed services business. $5,000 a month is much more profitable over the long term than a $100,000 sale. But in that first month, it's $95 less. So $95,000. So how do you, if your business isn't set up to deal with that drop, then you don't do it. So coming back to that question, when is it time to look at a different channel? When you've acquired a new product. So, some of the companies that are on big acquisition trails, if I think of somebody like a Cisco or an Adobe or a OpenText, for example, they build businesses by acquiring multiple technologies. Well, some of the technologies are quite different to what they used to sell, and so you may need new partners. Actually, Cisco is a great example. Go back 20, 25 years, most people would have said Cisco is a networking company. Today, some people would say it's a security company. They're two very different things. And so you need a different type of partner to sell Cisco today compared to Cisco 20 years ago. So when the product changes or an acquisition, that's one. The other one is when a buyer behavior changes. And we saw that very much in buyer wanting technology as a service rather than as a product. I mean, that was driven very much by, the leaders in this were Microsoft, Autodesk, and Adobe, who really drove this, initially this direction towards as a service and recurring revenue. But today, it's really common. But that buyer behavior changed. And so you need partners who are better at selling that. And if I can give you a really simple example, if you're selling one product versus another, the decision when I'm advising you which one to buy is product knowledge. I say, I know this is what this product does, and this is what this product does, and that's why this one's better than that one. Okay, that's product skills. But if I'm selling you a solution and either you're going to buy it as a perpetual software license or as a recurring revenue model, the product's the same, does the same thing, but it's a different business model. So again, I come back to my comment earlier about you need business skills to do that. And that is, being able to sell a business outcome, not just a product outcome. Not all your partners are going to do that. So when do you change partners? When there's a change in product, when there's a change in customer buying behavior, or a change in business model.
In your experience, what's the most effective way to increase partner mindshare when you're not the top vendor?
Yeah, and that is a tough question because when you're a small vendor, we talk about the importance of profitability. If you're a small vendor, then even a high margin of a small revenue is going to be small. So the key things are either to be a technology that, if position it as a technology that enables something bigger. So, for example, if you're a security solution that, by plugging in enables something that, let's take a airline ticketing system, for example. If you can position yourself as, this is why we're critical to enable this greater solution, then a partner will incorporate you because they see it as something that supports something bigger. Or if it is something that accelerates the larger sale, which is, you could do it this way, but it's going to take you this long. By implementing my technology, it'll accelerate the sale or make it faster. Or the other one, and this is kind of a weird one and a little understood one, is if I can help you, if you're my partner, if I can help you sell the complete solution, even though it's got nothing to do with me. So, for example, let's say you and I, let's pretend you are a security solution provider, as an example, and we're talking to a customer, and I'm the vendor. So we're doing a joint sale together. I'm the vendor, you're the security solution provider, and it's a security solution. And we're talking to a customer, and I say to them, so tell me, this bit, what's it for? And they said something like, well, this is a really big project for us. We're rolling out, Microsoft 365 across the whole thing, and it's going to involve re-engineering things and blah, blah, blah. And they talk about this much broader solution. Now, remember, I'm a security vendor, and you're there talking about a security solution. I'd say, oh, okay, actually, this is me, the vendor, remember, saying, actually, I can understand why you're talking to these guys. Like, I know we're here to talk about security, but what I've been really impressed with this partner is just their capability around migration, integration, etc. That's one of the reasons we like working with them. We know we're a small piece of the puzzle, and for it to work, we need integrators who could put this solution together, and that's why these guys are so great to work with. See, I'm not trying to help you.
Enabling a business, bigger business by leveraging your small footprint.
Exactly right. I'm not trying to help you win my product sale. I'm trying to help you win the whole
overall
thing.
Solution.
And when that happens, you start taking me to lots of clients, because me talking about you being great is actually more powerful than you talking about how great you are.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of scenarios here. We get a consistent behavior from vendors and partners.
Yeah.
When they're not transparent or they don't trust each other.
Yeah.
How do you shift that? Like, for example, what happens is when there's a conflict, a channel conflict.
Yeah.
Either partner or vendor will take path of least resistance, or they will not communicate effectively, or worse, they will just ghost each other.
Yeah.
What's your advice to counter that?
Ghosting usually doesn't happen when it's conflict. Ghosting normally happens when there's a lack of interest. That's when that will happen. We can talk about, and that's this comment about if you're a small vendor, it's because they don't see you as important. That's usually when they'll ghost you, because they just don't see you as important. So there's strategies about making sure you're not talking about the product, but how to implement a bigger solution. That's the strategy. But channel conflict is different. Normally it's not ghosting, it's the opposite. It's arguing with each other. And there's, because there's emotion, because channel conflict is where I think we have a deal together and one of us screws the other one over. Either you as a vendor go direct, or me as the partner sell your competitor. That's where or where we have an imbalance where you give me a price, but you give my competitor a better price. Or your direct sales guys. That's where channel conflict happens. And that's not normally ghosting. That's normally a very, aggressive conversation.
Yeah.
So My answer to that is, if they're partners you want to keep, you don't surprise them. You tell them beforehand. I talk about this transparency, and remember I talked about channel partners. You'll get respect not by appeasing them, but by actually. The best thing you can do as a channel partner is to ring up and say, "Listen, I just want to let you know, our customer has said to us, we want your product, but we don't want this partner." Before I respond to them, don't tell them I passed that information on to you, but before I respond to them, I'm letting you know, see what you can do to recover it. But if not, come back to me, let me know what the strategy is.
So you're saying communication is
It is.
the best way to overcome such challenges.
And having a really difficult conversation. Actually, the easiest thing to do is, regardless of which side you are, whether you're the vendor or the partner, always reverse it and then say, how would I want them to respond? So if you're the vendor, pretend the end user went to the partner and said, we really like you as a partner, but we don't want this vendor. What would you want them to do? And if you're the partner, think the same way. Then the customer went to the vendor and said, we want your product, but we won't want this partner. What would you want them to do? And that's how you act. Because it's impossible to say, well, you should say, no, if you don't want them, you can't have us. That's unrealistic and that's unfair. But how would you want them to behave? And that's how you should behave. Because it's the exact same. It's the same scenario, but in reverse.
If in 2025 you were to build a channel, what will be your first 3 moves?
Okay. So remember I said you always begin with what's the product and what's the customer? So the channel that you have will vary. So firstly, we've got to decide what kind of channel we want.
Start with why?
Yeah. Why do we need a channel? Is it good, etc. But so what are the 3 things? It's actually those 3 things that I said earlier on. The first one is, if I was going to build a channel right from scratch, to be, who's my customer? Who's going to buy this product? How do they buy? Why do they buy? Who do they buy from? I've got to understand that. And the second one is, what's the gap in my product? And then the third one is, what's my financial model? And so based on those things, that would determine what my channel is going to look like in 2025. And the thing that's changed, and funnily enough, those 3 questions, I'm going to say they're the same questions I would have asked 30 years ago. The difference is now there's many more options, depending on the customer and the product. What I mean by many more options is there's more alliance companies, meaning I may sell a piece, but I work with somebody else who sells something else. Or there's consulting-only firms, which is, my channel is a company that doesn't sell my product, they only make services out of it. Actually, Salesforce is probably a good example. Partners don't make money out of a Salesforce license. They make the money out of the services. So how weird is that? You have a channel where they're making 0 margin, but they're incredibly loyal because of the money they make. So if I was going to build a channel, it's not about looking at what sort of partners do I need. It's about looking at who are my customers and why do they buy? What's the product gap I'm trying to fill? And how do I make this financially viable? And that's what I would begin with.
Perfect. How do you see the role of marketplaces like AWS and Azure changing the traditional channel model?
Yeah. So what's happened, and the change that has happened in 2025 and the previous years, is the money is no longer made out of the product; it's made out of the services and the ongoing recurring revenue. So, and it started to evolve. 20 years ago, you made a lot of money out of the license or the hardware. Today, the margins have become really, really lean. Marketplaces are going to accelerate that. So, as a partner, it's a few things. A, you need to work out how you work with these, behemoths. You may be the one providing the services, because an AWS isn't going to provide the services. They're going to sell the product, but someone else has to do the services. So you've got to find a way to provide the services. In terms of the product, you may actually buy it from AWS. But if I said, what's going to be the change? What these organizations will do is simplify the acquisition of technology. What they will not do is negate the need for the services around it. If you've built your business and you continue to run your business based on making money out of the product, that's going to be a hard slog in the future.
Very good answer. Let's take a scenario.
Mhm.
It's an established organization with, let's say, 200 million ARR, annual recurring revenue,
Mhm.
with 50 odd salespeople and a few channel salespeople.
Yeah.
If you were to audit their channel program,
Mhm.
what would be, let's say, 2 or 3 questions or soul searching questions you will ask to evaluate or find gaps in their strategy?
Okay. Um, this is going to seem like a strange answer, but $200 million recurring revenue, that's a serious business. So this is big, and you've got an established base, and you've got partners who are heavily invested in it, and everyone's making a reasonable amount of money. It's going to be hard for you as the vendor to actually know what the issues are, if there are any, because people won't be completely honest because there's too much money at stake. In that instance, that's where it's important to get a third-party research company to interview the partners that are not performing. So the indicators are where they're saying something to you, but their behavior is different. And whenever you ask them, they'll go, oh no, things are fine. Because no one's going to say what really is the issue, because there's too much money, everything's working, etc. So that's where a third-party organization is really valuable at asking questions, because they will say things to the third-party company that they may not say to you. And if I can give you a very brief example, because we did this for a client who said, something's not right, but everyone tells us it's working. We interviewed them, and after a bit of prodding, they actually said, look, they've hired a sales rep. None of my guys like him, but we can't tell them that, because if we do, we lose all our leads. You never would have found that out without somebody else telling you. That's an isolated example. And I'm not saying all sales reps are bad, please don't. But that was an example of one where they couldn't afford to say what was really the matter because of the negative impact it would have. So the short answer is, when you've got a business that's that established, the only way to really find out is to have somebody else who's independent doing it under the guise of anonymity.
So, Moheb, great insights today, but I can't let you go without asking this important question, which is purely coming from a place of you being mentor to a lot of other channel people.
Yeah.
What will be your advice to someone who's starting their career now in channel sales, or a budding star who's scaling up the ladders?
Yeah.
What would it take him to stand out in a tough competitive market?
Stop talking about your product. I don't care. I don't care about your product. Stop telling me how good it is. Tell me that eventually, but tell me how I make money out of it. Understand my business. So listen before you talk to me. And it is astounding to me how many sales reps will go and meet with a partner and say, tell me about your business. And within 5 minutes, they're talking about how great their product is, because they can't help themselves. So stop talking about your product. Listen to me as your partner and find out what I do. How do I make money? Who is my customer base? Where are my sensitivities? Am I trying to build a services business? Am I trying to build a recurring revenue business? Whatever. Find out about me. There's an old phrase which is, people care more about how much you know about them than you know about your product. If I can give you one bit of advice, find out about their business and talk about how you can help that, and then eventually talk about your product. But stop talking about the product.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Moheb. Thanks for coming to the show. It was a pleasure having you here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.